I love being back. I appreciate you bringing me back and kind of rounding this out. I think I kicked off this series right
Mhm.
a few months ago. This is awesome being the bookend. I guess that's a good thing, right? So no, I appreciate it. Yeah. So everyone communicates, few connect. That's a good one, right? It's a good book. If you get a chance, I suggest reading it. It's one of my all-time favorites. In fact, I usually have copies of it in my office, but I've given them out to all my friends who are struggling with communicating with people. And I think when I kicked this series off, I really talked about that. Um, leadership is nothing more than influence, right? John Maxwell says leadership is nothing more than influence. Nothing more, nothing less. So it's all about influence. And as leaders, as people of influence, I think the number one thing that we can do is help is be better communicators. And there's all kinds of people that are good communicators, but the true leaders, the true people of influence are people that actually can connect to the audience. And I'm not just saying audience like in a forum like this or on stage or in a small group. It's really anytime you're having a communication with someone that you're providing influence to. So I get the great pleasure of doing this. I think we talked about someone following their passion, and this is my passion. My passion's been communication for a long time and leadership. For those who don't know me, again, my name's Steve Kramer. I'm with SCR Concepts for the John Maxwell team, and we're going to take about the next 40 minutes to just kind of go through what communication is and what communication is, more importantly, and how we connect to our audience. And it is hard, right? I think who here loves being in front of an audience, right? Anyone raise their hands, right? Who hates being in front of an audience, right? I think more hands go up. There's a study that says most people would rather be in the coffin than give their obituary, right? Kind of a morbid thought, but the biggest fear is speaking is greater than dying, which is crazy to me. But I guess we're all bad speakers and bad communicators and bad connectors when we all start. In fact, I can roll back many years ago when I first did my first kind of presentation to a small group. I think my audience thought there was an earthquake under me because I was shaking so bad. I was sweating from head to toe. I was so nervous. I basically stood up and threw up, right? I was just throwing slides and throwing stuff, had no connection to the audience and just got off as fast as possible, right? Got my check mark and it was miserable experience. And I said to myself, I'm never going to be that bad again. And I think every person that communicates and everyone that tries to connect with their audience starts there. There's no born speakers, right? There's some people that can speak pretty good, but there's no born communicators that actually connect. John Maxwell, my mentor, he tells a funny story that he was a minister at first in a small farm town in Indiana, and he just came out of seminary school, and he became the lead pastor at this church. And there was about a 55 people congregation, not a huge congregation. And he got up there, and then if you've seen John, he's got this ultimate charisma. He's just so passionate. And he's talking and going on, and he gets done, and the service is over, and he goes to his wife, and he said, "Wow, did you hear all the buzz after my talk?" And his wife Margaret leans back and laughs, said, John, that wasn't buzz, that was snoring. You bored him to death, right? And you look at John now, and he's probably the most highly paid public speakers that are out there. But we're all bad at first, and it's really a skill that it takes to not just communicate but to connect, because we can all communicate. We all have communications every day with each other, with our family, with our friends, with our coworkers, our clients. But how do we truly connect? And that's the true sign of what a leader or a person of influence is. And so what I'm going to do is go through kind of 5 principles and 5 practices of how we as leaders become better at connecting with the people we're trying to influence or have influence with. Remember, there's multiple levels of influence, and that pinnacle leadership level is all about adding values to others, being able to, kind of be that ladder holder and ladder extender, and not lead by position. So, there's five qualities of, if you look at good connectors, on TV, on if you've seen them in person, they typically all have five kind of qualities. And the first one is vision. They have a vision in their head they're trying to get out to the people they're working with. Number two, they're pragmatic, right? They're very concise, they're clear, they're simple. They're not going like I did, show up and throw up, or spray and pray. You're just, please, I'm going to take everything in my head and give it to you and hope you figure it out. They build consensus. The third one is building consensus with their audience. And again, this could be an audience of one, this could be an audience of many thousands. They have a sense of charisma, or a sense of just posture, that of confidence, that they're passionate about what they're talking about. And they have, more importantly, they have a sense of trustworthiness. Now, I've been to many, many, many speaking engagements, and been to conferences, and the person on stage, are going, man, I don't know, I don't trust them, I don't trust their body language, I don't trust their tone, I'm really not going to work on that, work with them on that. So you think about it, there is, out of these five real qualities that exhibit across everyone, four of them are really skills about connecting with the audience, right? Vision is really the only one that, that's in your head, but the other four are all about the others. It's all about connecting with your audience. So again, people, when we're communicating, people aren't aware that we have a disconnection, right? And especially in Zoom world, it's super hard when everyone's off video, or you're trying to connect with people that are via the camera. It's hard to do that, but there's some connecting signals that you can see that say, hey, I do have a connection with this audience, or I do have a connection with that person. Maybe that audience, or that the person that you're communicating with goes the extra mile, right? Um, Really goes the extra mile in connecting with you. So the first principle we want to talk to you about is really that connecting with others is really can expand your influence across the board. So if you are connecting with your audience and you're communicating with your audience, it actually expands your circle of influence. And if you remember, when we kicked the series off, we did the little dot with the circles. As that circle expands, or that sphere expands, it really is because you are connecting with your audience more and more. So this first principle, again, is all about connection, and it's all about expanding your level of influence. So some of the connecting signals: people go the extra mile to come talk to you, or maybe seek you out afterward, right? That's a good sign of connection. um People express themselves more readily, right? It's like you don't have to pull for questions, or you don't have to pull for conversation during your communication, right? People are openly expressing their thoughts and their ideas, and constructive feedback, right? Again, they're openly sharing those ideas. People have positive energy, right? You're recharging their emotional batteries. You can go to I don't know, I went to a Zoom web, and there's 1,000 people on there, and it was the most boring person. He was very monotone, and my emotional batteries were just going, good Lord, is this person over yet? Please, I want to get to the next one, because I know the next one's good. So if you have good positive energy that you're feeling from your organization, your people you're kind of working with, man, you're starting to have that connection. You have an enjoyable experience. Everyone feels good about what they're doing. They feel good about spending an hour in Zoom. God knows we're on enough Zooms every day, right? That Zoom fatigue. I hear Zoom fatigue all the time, and I go, man, there must be some really bad presenters, or very bad, because for me, if I'm engaged and I'm connected with that person, again, that positive energy comes out. there's a growing synergy in the group. You can feel kind of the effectiveness of the greater or the good of the sum of all the contributors coming into you. There's unconditional love, there's emotional bondedness, there's unguarded openness, right? Someone might say, when you have a strong connection with them, they might share a personal story that they may not share. So again, you have to think about the different aspects of connecting really does improve your influence. So the second principle, we'll bounce over to that one, really is all about connecting, is all about others, not ourselves. And this is a hard one. A lot of time when we're communicating and we're trying to connect, we think the spotlight's on us. But it shouldn't be. The spotlight should be on you. I should, Brianna invited me to share my point of view around everyone connects, everyone communicates, few connect. Sorry about that. But it's really, if I just say, hey, I'm just going to go read all this stuff and I'm just going to go and not offer some personal experience or some golden nuggets for you to take away, then it's a waste of time. So my principle and John's principle is all about others. When we're communicating with others, it's about them, not about us. It's about their agenda. And we talked about that earlier, but leaders value others and offer wisdom, knowledge, experience to influence with others. So if we have a false sense of challenges around number two, that, hey, we're communicating for me and I'm, kind of doing some chest pounding, then you might want to look at your own values, right? I think you might have some challenges there. But, a lot of that comes from just immaturity, right? I remember when I was early into my career, especially my speaking career, it was about me. It was about me being on stage and me getting the handshakes and the high fives, right? That was me being immature. It wasn't about me sharing wisdom and knowledge and valuing my audience or the people I was working with. Sometimes it's ego, right? A lot of time I've seen speakers, like, it's all about them. If, they pull up in their Rolls Royce and have the Rolex on. I actually was on a webcast about 3 weeks ago, and the presenter kept showing his Rolex to the camera, like how important he was. I'm like, I'm out, right? You see what happens when you're communicating with anyone, and again, this could be on a stage, this could be one-on-one. There's 3 questions everyone's asking in their heads. Do you care for me, right? If you're presenting to me, I'm going to ask myself, do you care about me? Second question, can I trust you? Because if I don't trust you, I'm not really going to latch on and give you permission to lead me. And can you help me? Can you help me in any way, any challenge I have or any opportunity that's inside me? How can you help me? So those are 3 questions that we've got to make sure that we're answering in our communications, that we're always working on valuing others and trying to connect, because connections can be made, but they have to be continue to be cared for, or they're easily broken, not instantly broken, but easily broken. Principle number 3 is really about connecting goes beyond words, right? If I'm trying to connect with you and I would have shown up this morning and said, gee, I'm really happy to be here. I know I kicked this off and I'm just happy to be back as the bookend. And I mean, I said the same thing I did earlier, right? But how was my body language? How was the tone of my voice? Did I have the energy that I had in the beginning? And now even coffee's still kicking in and I'm not at 100% quite yet, but it'll be a lot better if I would have just, oh, how you doing? I'm so happy to be here. I mean, what happens is 90% of our entire communication is based on our tone of our voice and our body language. Only about 10% are really the words in the first meeting, right? In the first meeting, people tend to make that instant kind of impression based on your body language and the tone of your voice. And they don't really put a lot of weight into your words. Now, as you continue to work with people, those start coming down, but it still is about 50% or more that your body language and your tone kind of set that impression, and again allow those people to give you permission to lead them. So you got to remember that. And and especially in a virtual world, it was very easily to be over here on my other monitor and start typing, but am I really connecting to you? If I'm over here, my eyes are over here, we're still talking, but I'm not really connecting with you. So again, in a virtual world, we have to put this in mind that we should be looking at the camera, we should be engaging with the audience as best as we can, because it does go beyond our words. And that's it's just again something that we have to remember as leaders and as communicators and connectors, that it goes beyond words, right? It does. If you come in and just have the energy and the passion, people are going to latch onto you. If you come in with a low energy and a low passion, people are going to instantly disconnect, and guess what? They're on their phones or they're doing other things. So there's a lot of I spend a lot of time with some of my coaching clients around this, is that it's not just your words. Your words are important, but it's really your complete delivery of your message. So there's three components to a communication. And this comes from, again, some research around brain science, that we need to spur a thought, we need to spur an action, and we need to spur emotion. And when we're communicating with someone, if we're thinking about, again, our principle of valuing others, adding influence, it's less about words, but it's the complete package of body language, words, and tone, is that we want to be able to tie into someone's emotions through thought. That emotion then sparks actions. You see, what happens is, if sometimes we communicate, we just want to jump into the action and say, we want you to go change your world, go apply these values. Well, if you forget about the other side of the brain, because that's very left side of the brain, if you forget about that thought and emotion side of the brain, typically actions never happen, right? So we have to think about that. We have to make sure that we're kind of using the I call it the T method, right? Come with a thought that spurs an emotion that triggers action, right? And that is really how we connect with the people that we're trying to influence or trying to have influence with. Action is something that you can do. Action also is something that is connecting visually. So if you think about an action, what can people see, right? Typically, and again, this is a little bit of brain science, but in action, people want to see it, want to see the big picture. A thought, again, is something that we know that we're connecting with them intellectually. What do people can understand? And an emotion is, again, what does something they can feel, something that they can feel emotionally. Now, principle 4 is all about energy. And we kind of talked about this a little bit. But as someone who's communicating, your audience, again, one or many, has about half as much energy as you. It's crazy, but it is, right? When you're having a communication, usually you're more passionate about your idea than your audience is to start with. But it requires energy. It requires preparation. It requires practice. It requires energy as you as a connector. Brianna can call me tomorrow and say, Steve, I want you to talk on this topic. And I'm okay, but I still have some time to prepare. Even if she gave me 5 minutes, I would still need that 5 minutes to prepare in my head to say, okay, here's what I want to talk about. But it does require energy. And a lot of times what I see is presenters and connectors and communicators just wing it. And that's okay if you know your what your topic is upside down, left and right. But what happens when they wing it, they become as to the audience as unprepared or uncommitted or uninteresting or uncomfortable, right? It's like, okay, I'm going to talk about communication and I'm really nervous and I'm kind of bouncing around and, a lot of that nervous energy comes out, right? So if you think about it, that even when we're connecting on a communication just over the phone, it requires energy from you to prepare yourself. Again, four unpardonable sins of a communicator is be unprepared, be uncommitted, be uninteresting, and be uncomfortable, because you're not gonna have that connection back to your audience. Again, connecting requires, as leaders, as us as leaders, it connects us to have initiative. It requires us to go first sometimes. It requires us to kind of walk over and reach out and connect with that person or communicate with that person. It requires clarity. We need to be clear in our communication. The last thing a leader should be is unclear. It's okay to be unsure of a vision, but it's not okay to be unclear. So prepare. We have to have patience. It requires patience to slow down. As communicators, we tend to speed up really fast because we're really excited about this topic and we're bouncing around, and you're going, whoa, back the truck up a minute. That point you just made is so powerful. You blew right by it, right? Again, a lot of times what happens when people are talking is we like to talk. I like to say sometimes patience is a virtue. Slow down, pause, especially if you're delivering a really important point, again, to one person or many. Pause. Give it a second to soak in, because our brains can't filter out all the other noise, right? And it can't filter out all the other things that are going on our head. We want to make sure that we have patience, slow down, pause. The other thing connecting requires energy is selflessness. Give communication, give connecting, give advice without any regard to getting. It should all about be giving. And the next one, because connecting requires energy, right? Take time to recharge. I know a lot of times when I'm speaking, and if I'm speaking for an hour or 2 hours, take time to let your voice sip in a little bit, right? Recharge your thoughts. And again, that goes back to that patience, because if your stamina is dropping, remember your audience is about 50% of your stamina or your energy. Theirs is dropping just as fast. So have some time to recharge. You'll see great communicators, in a bigger audience, kind of move to a different part of the audience. And the reason why they're doing that, A, is to connect with the entire big room, but it's allowing them time to recharge on their thoughts that go from here to there. So you'll see a lot of good presenters, and John does this a lot. Again, John's 77 years old. He's been speaking for his entire life almost. He'll take some time when he wants to shift to a new topic to take a drink of water, to kind of readjust himself, maybe set his posture back up, right? And what he's doing, he's just recharging himself. He's giving himself time for his energy levels to come back up. And it's not, you look at all, I'm going to blow all the good, speakers out there, some of those hidden secrets, but that's what they're doing. So look for this. If you find someone that's a good presenter, look for it. They will stop and recharge themselves. So principle 4, again, requires energy. Principle 5 is connecting is more skill than natural talent, right? I think we talked about this. I was a horrible presenter. John was a horrible presenter. I think every presenter, every communicator, every connector that was out there we all started off as bad. So it is a skill. It is a skill that takes time, it takes practice. But if you start today just trying to be a better connector with these 5 principles, and now we're going to get into some practices, is that it is a skill and you will be successful in connecting with others. I use these, these aren't techniques. I use these skills to connect with my 17-year-old daughter, right? And my 21-year-old son and my 25-year-old stepdaughter, right? To my parents, to my job, to my personal lives. I'm always making sure I'm using these principles about connecting, making sure that I'm building a connecting relationship with them, that I'm valuing others, that I always have good positive energy. I think I said a lot of times my daughter struggles with mental health sometimes, and her condition sometimes she gets really she gets high panic attacks, high anxiety attacks. And I use the skills that I have to connect with her, and when she's in that low state, to be able to present her up and lift her up. I've used skills to connect with her in making sure that social media doesn't define her. I've used skills that I've learned in connecting with her as a 17-year-old, daughter who doesn't want to speak to his dad anyways, doesn't even want dad in her room. But I've used these skills in my business life and my personal life, and it has been a long journey. It does take time. But the great thing is everyone can be an awesome connector. Right? You could be a fantastic connector if you just put the effort in. Remember, growth isn't automatic. Growth has to be intentional. So those are the first 5 principles that really is about connecting with others. And again, they're just principles. Now we're going to dive a little bit into some practices around connecting with others. Remember, we all communicate, but few connect. All right. So first practice, and this one's a good one. And this one, I think, in this state of our world we're in, I think this one is probably the most important. Is connect. Practice number 1 is connect on a common ground. Right? I think in everyone's goes so bipolar. It's almost bipolar. It is bipolar, but polar opposites. That if you're not in one side or the other, or up or down or wherever, that you don't exist. And it doesn't matter what side, wherever, we all see it. There's no common ground connection anymore. And I think it goes back to values, and that's a whole nother discussion. But I think it comes down to finding common ground with your audience. Like I said, with my daughter, I try to find common ground with what's triggering her to be in that moment. I try to find common ground with my son, who's trying to find a new apartment to live in because his roommate got him all kicked out for next year. But there's some barriers, internal barriers to ourselves that we tend to forget about when we talk about common ground. And the first one really is assumption. And when I mean assumption, is that assumption just says, hey, I assume they already know, passionate about this topic. I'm just assuming that they know this. And yeah, I don't need to connect with them on a common ground. Some of them it's indifference. I don't really care. I don't care what they think. Right? It's like, whatever. It's kind of ambivalent. It's like they can be on board. They can't be on board. It doesn't matter to me. The other 2 are arrogance, right? And I've seen this. I think we've all been witness to this. Is like someone's up on stage and they're gonna, come at you and punch you in the nose. Doesn't matter. It's their way or the highway. It just, you tend to forget about the common ground. And I think sometimes a lot of the arrogance is what we see most of. And arrogance, excuse me, goes to control. A lot of times I've seen people that try to connect are typically arrogant or have an arrogance mindset, but also want to make sure they're controlling the conversation, that they always have to be in control. And these kind of 2 go together. And these typically, if you remember from the first time, are really in that positional influence or that positional leadership. So make sure you're connecting on common ground. Do some discovery. Find out what's driving them so you can connect with them on that common ground. And it does go a long way because once you connect on that common ground and whatever it is, I mean, anytime I'm trying to connect with someone, I'm always trying to find by open questions, by being able to listen and listen for a key word that I'm like, oh, okay, we have a common ground there. Now I can start working with that common ground to be able to tighten that connection. Remember, connections are sometimes harder to make, but they're easy to lose. And if we don't have that common ground, sometimes that goes away. So, practice one, again, just being on common ground. Common ground kind of, choices for finding common ground. I would say, be available, having availability, being around, being just there, as if you're a people leader, right? If just be around, be in the crowd, have your head above the crowd, but be in the crowd. But ask questions. I think I talked about that. Ask open questions, get conversation going, listen, right? We talked about these are a lot of things of being a person of influence, listening, thoughtfulness. We got to be thoughtful. We got to value others. We got to put the 10 stamp on everyone's forehead. No matter what, they're always a 10. Be open. Be open to share some of your struggles, some of your challenges that you've overcome. Because a lot of times when someone hears that you have had a scar, or you had a battle wound, when you're open about it, it tends to open them up. And then now you might have some common ground. Have some humility. Have humility when you're talking to others. Again, it goes back to, understanding others. Be adaptable, right? One of the companies I worked with a long time ago, they have a say, be audible ready, right? Be adaptable, be adaptable in a situation. Don't be just stuck in the ground. Be likable, right? If we're leaders, and you all are, we have to be likable. People want to know, like, and trust us. When they know, like, and trust us, then we have good connection strategy with them. Practice two is about connectors do difficult work at keeping it simple, right? As connectors, we must keep it simple for our audience. As complex as our head is, and as complex as our mind is, we don't understand complex. Our brain tries to break it down to something simple. So if you think about it, say it slowly, have a smile, right? The smile helps you kind of just be joyful about whatever you're talking about, but keep it simple. Simple is easy to understand. When you're connecting around simplicity, have some humor. People like to laugh. Now, I'm not saying do the stupid, icebreaker joke, but have some humor. Laugh at yourself. Most importantly, laugh at yourself. If you cough, if you trip, if you do whatever, just laugh at yourself. People like humor. Have heart. Come with heart. Come with conviction of your heart. Provide some hope. Offer some hope, some vision. And then as people of value that value others, like myself and you guys, offer help. Talk to people. Don't talk above them. No one likes to be talked above, right? We all like, ugh. Get to the front. Like I said, be in the group, but get to the front. Be having that knowledge and that empathy. I think I saw empathy pull up on the notes. Absolutely. You need to have empathy, but get to the point, right? The last time you want to do is ramble on for 45 minutes. People are already checked out. And then, oh, here's my point. No, start that in the beginning. Say it over and over and over and over and over. If you've got an important point, make sure they understand it. You hear this in commercials, the 7 times repeating a lot of times. They do that for a reason. Say less. Sometimes less is more by having those pauses. So keep it simple. Practice number 2. Practice number 3. create an experience that everyone enjoys, right? If you can create an experience, and I know we've been going on about 30 minutes here, and I'm starting to reach your level of, you know, interest level drops. It's just normal. But create an experience that everyone enjoys. The last thing you want to be on is an experience that you hate because you're not going to connect with them. But if you create an experience that everyone enjoys, what's going to happen is that it makes you take responsibility of your listeners. I was at a presentation and they said, wow. And I was talking to a group of presenters in the back, and they're like, boy, that audience was terrible. They weren't good. They were a bad audience, right? I'm like, no, that was not a bad audience. You were bad, but I didn't want to say that. I got on stage, and I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but I made it enjoyable, and the crowd was, they were engaged, they were laughing, and I came back and he said, well, it must have been the break. And I finally said, no, it was your message. Your message wasn't very experienced, wasn't very good. You didn't take responsibility of creating an enjoyable environment for your audience. Communicate in their world, right? The last thing you want to do is show up and communicate in a world that they don't understand. Think about it. If someone got up on stage and was speaking in Greek and you didn't understand Greek, would you really be able to connect with you? Probably not. So a lot of times we get so passionate in our world, we tend to forget about communicating in their world. Capture the people's attention from the start. Get them engaged from the beginning. Brain science shows the highest level engagement is usually in the first 7 minutes of a conversation, and it drops extremely fast until about 18 to 22 minutes is when people just don't remember what you're saying anyways. So you have to get their attention from the beginning and say it so it sticks. Make it stick. I'm a huge proponent of Simon Sinek. Start with why. If you haven't seen that, go out on TED Talks, or get his book. It is phenomenal to say what he says. He says, start with the people's why, not their how, not their what. And say it so it sticks, because what happens if it sticks, it's going to go back to that T method. It's going to spur a thought. That's going to start an emotion. That's going to trigger an action. If you don't say it so it sticks, that process is never going to start. And what happens is you want an action, but you forgot about the thought and the emotion. So practice 3, again, create an experience everyone enjoys. The next one is about connectors inspire people. Right? If we're communicating with someone for a reason, we're there to add value to them. So we're there to inspire them. If we're just communicating to communicate, why communicate? What's the real point of communication? Maybe just to hear yourself. Remember, communication and connection is all about the others. So if you're showing up and you're not adding any thought leadership or not inspiring, then you have to ask yourself, as a connector, are you really there to connect? Or are you there for yourself? So there's an equation out there that's around inspiration. An inspiration equation is what people know plus what people see plus what people feel equals inspiration. So what do people know? What do you want them to know? What is it that you want them to understand? What do you want them to be focused on? What expectations do you have of them? That's what people want to know. What people see is your conviction as a communicator. Your example. Are you living what you're talking? Are you speaking from the heart, or are you speaking from a script? Right? So that's what people see. People see you. And especially in this virtual world, it's hard, but you have to remember that. What people feel. Do they feel it in your confidence? Do you feel that you have confidence in them? right? I mean, I don't know how many times I've been at a presentation and, the presenter was just like, yeah, again, this boring audience, right? It's like you have no confidence in them. You have no hope. You're not giving them any thought leadership. The other thing people feel is, are you grateful that you have the opportunity to communicate with them? Are you showing an attitude of gratitude, right? I know that term's overused, but it's an important point. It goes back to the golden rule: treat people the way you want to be treated. And if you're communicating with them, that's what people feel. And you can see if what people know, what people see, what people feel, again, thought, emotion, action. And action is inspiration. So you're giving them, inspiring them. That's why you're there. That's why you're there to communicate with them. We should always be inspiring. So principle 4. Now, principle 5, connectors, is all about credibility. Credibility is the currency that connectors have. And there's a checklist you should be thinking about every time you're connecting with someone. Have I connected with myself? Right? And that's a big one, right? Have I actually connected with myself, or am I just doing it, going through the motions, right? If you're just going through the motions, you haven't connected to yourself. Have I made my right, or have I made right my wrong? What do I mean by that? We all make mistakes. We're human. I'll give you an example. I flew to Singapore about 7 years ago. Flight was extremely delayed. I didn't get into Singapore until 9 that morning, Monday morning. I left on Saturday, got there 9 Singapore time, Monday morning. I had to do a 2-day workshop. I landed, went to the hotel, changed, ran over, and started. And I was horrible. I was jet lagged. I was terrible. And I knew it. Once we hit lunch, I went to the leader. I said, hey, I'm really, really sorry. I'm super jet lagged. I'm just not on my game. I apologize. I'm going to take the next 15 minutes and just go close my eyes for 15 minutes in the lobby and just kind of recharge. And I came back and I said that to the group. I said, listen, I'm very sorry. I'm not on my game today. And they all understood. And I promised them, I said, I will be better tomorrow. So I righted my wrong, right? I could have gone the rest of the day and just said, I don't care, but I care about them. Did I tell the truth? Am I telling the truth? Am I telling little white lies as I'm presenting to try to influence or manipulate, right? The negative side of influence. Am I vulnerable? Am I following the golden rule? Again, do I treat others the way I want to be treated? And then do I deliver results? So again, connecting credibility, your credibility is your currency. If you blow your credibility, you've blown the chance for that connection. And it's going to take time to repair it. Just like anytime we have credibility in our integrity, in our character, if we have a trip, it's harder to recover from that trip than it is to gain credibility, right? So just keep that in mind, that you have to be credible as a presenter. You have to have all these things. So kind of in summary, just kind of talk about all the 5 principles and the 5 practices. And I can send you these. I'll send these to Brianna. But I really want you to think about this. And I've got actually a worksheet. I've got a worksheet that that I can send to you, and it kind of goes through a lot of the stuff on a 1-pager. I sent it to you, Brianna, after this call. But I really want you to think about when we're leading, and anytime we're a leader, and again, a leader is just about influence, nothing more and nothing less. We have to be communicating. Communication is the number one thing for leaders. And if we're not good communicators, and when I say communicators equals connecting, we're not a leader. We're not a strong leader. And as we want to be strong leaders, right, we have to connect. It's the It's my golden rule. It's John's golden rule. I think it's this group's golden rule that we want to value others. And the only way we can add value to others is to communicate with them, to lead them, to inspire them. So thank you. I appreciate your time so much. I know there's a lot of information in 40 minutes. Like I said, I've got a 1-pager that I will send to you, to Brianna, if you want to get it out to the group. But I try to pour my heart on this. This is just so near and dear to me that just wanted to add value to you guys. And again, Brianna, thank you for inviting me back and bookending your awesome program. And look forward to working with any one of you. If you feel free to reach out, have any questions, I can some time to take some questions.
Yeah, the content was perfect today because it tied in a lot of what we talked about in our last session as it relates to emotional intelligence. You could see how different elements were pulled into this idea of communicating and connecting. I wondered if you could pull up your practices. I wanted to add a little asterisk, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure.
During practice number 2, we had talked about keeping it simple and adding the humor. I wanted to share an example of something that I saw last week, because communication in today's day and age, first of all, there's so many different channels to communicate. A lot of times people throw messages out there without sort of like reading the room or knowing their audience. And last week I saw a perfect example. It was on Friday, and it was a school district, not that my kids attend, but that I follow on social media. And the governor had just came off of TV talking about how, she was suggesting that schools go remote. And so obviously those are the answers parents are looking for. What is my school district going to do? What can I expect from them? How am I going to hear from them? Is it going to be a call, email? This district in particular went to social media and posted their hashtag Friday Funny, like right after. So number 1, that's not what your audience is looking for from you. Number 2, the humor is nice, but knowing your audience and reading the room, it was just not the right time. And in the comments, because then you always got to like see what are people saying, how are they feeling. Like the parents were very upset that that's what they chose to communicate out instead of the message that they were actually looking for. So that would just be my asterisk to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
To, go back to empathy. I put a note in there, empathy being the bridge to common ground, but I think it really applies to this practice number 2 of knowing what people need from you, by kind of putting yourself in their shoes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there was a question in, you think about communication isn't just Zoom or being on a stage or whatever. It could be an email, right? It could be a phone call. It could be a voice message. Anytime we're communicating, we should keep these principles in place. Now, granted, you wouldn't write a funny joke, but if you tell a little story, maybe in an email, or tell a little story in a voicemail, just a short one. Storytelling is amazing, but you got to have all these little components in here of how am I going to trigger a thought that spurs an emotion that triggers an action, right? And I think if you kind of keep these principles and practices in place with the asterisks, absolutely, it all talks about how we communicate, and it's all about just adding value to others.
Yeah, I made that note in there about when you were talking about Zoom fatigue, because yes, there are so many more Zooms, but when you think to being in person in the office with your coworkers, there's so many instances where you could just walk over to someone's desk, ask your question, and then leave. And now, because we're kind of all on these different schedules, it's like, okay, we have to schedule time to talk, and it's a lot of meetings.
In the virtual world, right? Part of that non-body language, and I've come up to I've come at a lot of Zoom presentations, and people are with their bookshelves behind you. Remember, your message, your credibility comes from you. And this gentleman was talking about a certain aspect, but I'm looking back, and I looked at his bookshelf because he had lots of really weird books on there, And some of the books in there were completely against what he was talking about. So that's part of the credibility. You got to remember, especially on Zoom, this whole window we're in is your credibility, right? And you're trying to create an experience that that is good for the audience. And you want a good mic, you want a good microphone, you want good lighting. I mean, I've got lighting on, and I've got my studio. This is my office, right? That's not a background. This is my actual real office. I did it for a reason. It's just that you want to make sure that the experience doesn't detract from your message, right? A lot of times you'll have people on their phones, like my mom, like FaceTime my mom. It's usually an hour conversation with, shot up her nose because she talks to it like this, right? I'm so distracted that I'm looking up her nose. I'm like, Mom, put it, then she puts it to her ear and now I'm getting an ear exam, right? It's like, all right, we're going to stop FaceTime. But it's those type of things we tend to forget about that can detract from your message and your ability to connect.
All right, so we've got about 6 minutes left here. What questions do you guys have for Steve, or comments that you want to add in to the discussion?
Steve, do you have any good resources on how to be more in tune with one's body language? I mean, I've been told my whole life how much that communicates, kind of tone and body language, but I still, to this day, struggle to find techniques and skills to maybe be more cognizant of it. Do you have any resources for that?
Yeah, there's and I'm trying to think of her name. Cuddy, Amy Cuddy. She's got some fantastic books around posture, right? We all get nervous when we talk, and when we get nervous, we kind of get into that body language. So she talks about a power posture. Amy Cuddy, great. She's fantastic. Funny thing was body language. Has anyone seen Wolf of Wall Street? Probably one of the raunchiest movies out there, but still a good movie. Matthew McConaughey, he did that kind of that chest thump thing. That was never in the scene. And what happens is Matthew McConaughey, $1 million actor, right, does that before every major scene to calm himself down, to get his body, his tone for the scene. So that's his routine of kind of getting him to go, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to be, my body language. It's just his reminder, right? There's tons of good content out there. You got to be careful. Some of them aren't that great. Like I went to a presentations class and I'll do this standing up so you can see it if you can. So they were told, and I can't do it. So they were told that I always had to keep my hands like this, right? Between my shoulders and my waist. So I always had to be and to give information, I went like this. And then when I received information, I went like that. To me, that's horrible. That's not natural. So the whole class, I was walking around like this, right? My hands were above my waist and below my shoulder. I got kicked out. But anyways, there's some bad information out there. But my key thing is to use, you want to be authentic, right? You want to be authentic in your tone. You want to be authentic in your body language, because when they see you walking down the hall, they want to see that same person, right? They don't want to see a different person they saw in front of them, because then your credibility is shot. So yeah, Amy Cuddy is probably a really good one. There's lots of them out there, but again, if they're telling you to do things that seem not authentic or kind of unnatural, then I would say try to avoid them, right? Then you get the pen clickers, you get the pocket shakers. That's all nerves. And that comes down to knowing your content, being passionate about it, and practice, right? Being prepared and practiced are two different things. I can be prepared, but if I may not be practiced, then those nervous habits come out. And tone, they say when you want to make an important point, you kind of slow down and you kind of like, hey, I got a really important point here, right? You kind of change your tone, and something that's super exciting, that all comes with practice. There's another person, if you look at Speaker Pro 360, it's actually my mentor, Roddy Galbraith. He's the one that taught me really, and John. He teaches John Maxwell how to speak. I don't know how you teach John Maxwell to speak, but he does. he's got a newsletter that you can sign up for. He gives you a little tips and tricks on messaging and body language and in video and camera setup, and he gives you a 3-minute video of kind of some tips and tricks. Awesome, like I said, one of my greatest mentors. Highly suggest it's a free resource.
Got it. Thank you, Steve.
Pro 360.
And Katie, I threw some of those links in the chat for you, so go ahead and grab them from there. And hopefully you've all kind of realized, not just today, but all of the themes that we've been discussing over the last few weeks, the way that, or the reason that we focused on these themes is because each one of them takes continuous work. You're never going to be 100% perfect in one area. And Katie, you brought up a great point in asking about body language. And these are some great tips for maybe you to keep in mind for your own body language. But when we're communicating with others, there's so much to pay attention to: what we're saying, how we're saying it, what our body is saying, what the other person is saying, what their body is saying. It's a lot, and it's okay to not be perfect at it. But as long as you are continuously, recognizing it, recognizing areas that you might need improvement, that's what a true leader does. And that kind of gets back to the self-awareness and social awareness that we talked about in our last session.
Leaders are learners.
Absolutely. Lifelong learners. It never ends. All right. We're coming up right on time here. Any other questions before we wrap up for today? All right. So Steve, I will keep an eye out for that one pager from you.
Yep.
So I can include it in everyone's toolbox today. In the toolbox email, you guys will also have a link to the book that was referenced today, Everyone Communicates, Few Connect. So if you want to dive deeper into these principles and practices, that'll be there for you, along with your journaling prompts to do some reflection on today's session. Any other closing words, Steve, as we wrap up today?
No, I appreciate your time, and you guys are a great audience, and just continue to learn, continue to connect.
Absolutely. Thank you guys so much. Have a great day.